Las Vegas has seen everything. Casinos the size of cities, fountains the height of buildings, volcanoes erupting every half hour on schedule. This city is literally built to amaze. But in 2023, something appeared here that silenced even the locals. Something that made everything else on the Strip suddenly seem small and boring. This is not a screen, not a ride, not a set. This is a building that looks back at you. $2,300,000,000. Say it out loud, slowly. This is not a country's budget, not the cost of a space program. This is the price of one building in the Nevada desert. A building that occupies less space than an average shopping mall, yet is the most expensive entertainment structure ever built by humans. But before we talk about money, let's talk about numbers of a different kind. 112 meters high. That is higher than the Statue of Liberty, including its pedestal. 157 meters wide at its widest point. 54,000 square meters of LED surface on the outside. 1,200,000 light elements, each containing 48 individual diodes. 18,000 seats inside, and every single one perfect. Not a single column blocking the view, not a single bad seat. This is not just a big building. This is a different category of existence.
Now add the Nevada desert. Air temperature in summer, plus 45 degrees. In winter, minus. Daily temperature swings of tens of degrees force metal to expand and contract every 24 hours. A structure that is rigidly fixed will simply tear itself apart within a few years. So the building must move, breathe, have built-in flexibility, calculated mathematically. And then the wind. In the open desert, without natural barriers, wind load on a convex surface of this size creates forces capable of shifting the building off its foundation, literally. Engineers from Populous, who designed the project, spent hundreds of hours in wind tunnels, blowing scale models before approving the final shape and mounting system. Every decision here was bought at the price of thousands of hours of calculations and dozens of alternatives that failed the test. It all starts underground, as always. Before the first steel element rose above ground level, 600 steel piles were driven into the Vegas sand. 600! They went deep to bedrock, where the ground no longer moves, no longer settles, no longer reacts to temperature and humidity. Only there could they create a foundation worthy of what was planned to be built on top. Then they poured the foundation, a huge reinforced concrete ring capable of absorbing not only the vertical load from the building's weight, but also horizontal forces, the bursting pressure that a spherical dome creates at the base, trying to spread apart. It is like putting an inflated balloon on a table and pressing slightly from above, it tries to slip out. The sphere's foundation is created to prevent this. And then begins what I call engineering theater, because watching this from the outside is a real show. They brought one of the largest crawler cranes in the world to the site, the DMAG CC8800. This machine was specially delivered from Belgium across the ocean in dozens of containers. They assembled it on site over several weeks. Lifting capacity, 1,600 tons. For comparison, this is the weight of 13 fully loaded Boeing 747s. This crane lifted sections of the steel skeleton, huge trusses, curved along a precisely calculated line, one after another, in a spiral from bottom to top. Each section weighed dozens of tons and had to stand exactly in its place, with an error of millimeters. Otherwise, the next section simply would not dock, and then the one after that. An error at the beginning multiplies by 100 at the finish. The most tense moment of the entire construction, closing the dome. 32 main steel trusses spreading from the foundation upward had to meet at one point at a height of 100 meters. In one compression ring, a steel hoop
that takes all the bursting forces of the structure and holds the dome from collapse. When the last section went up, almost dead silence fell on the site. Engineers watched the laser measuring instruments. Mathematics said everything would match, but mathematics, these are numbers on paper. And here, hundreds of tons of steel in the air. The section stood in place, perfectly. This was the moment when the building, which existed only in calculations and models, first became real. Now, about what most people do not know. The sphere you see outside and the sphere that exists inside, these are two different buildings. Under the outer dome is a full-scale concert arena for 18,000 spectators. Concrete, steel, tiered levels, technical floors, engineering systems. This is an independent building with its own foundation and its own supporting frame. And the outer dome, the Exosphere, stands separately. It has its own foundation, its own steel skeleton, its own load system. It does not rest on the inner building. Between the two structures, a gap, space. They work independently of each other, each perceiving its own load. Why is this needed? First, for acoustics. The inner arena is isolated from the outer shell. This means vibrations, wind loads, thermal expansion of the outer dome are not transmitted inside. Spectators feel nothing but the music. Second, it allows servicing and replacing elements of the outer shell without stopping the arena's operation. If a light panel fails, technicians work in the space between the two buildings while a concert is going on inside. This engineering solution looks like an architectural trick, but in reality, it is the result of a deep understanding of how this structure will be used.
And now, to what makes the sphere, to its skin. Imagine a hockey puck, heavy, rubber, familiar. Now imagine that inside this puck, 48 LEDs, each capable of reproducing any of 16 million colors. This is the light element of the exosphere. Engineers call them pucks. There are 1,200,000 of these pucks on the surface of the sphere. They are fixed to aluminum cassette panels, which in turn are screwed to the steel skeleton. Installation went in a spiral, from bottom to top, section by section. Fiber optic cable for control signal and power wires are connected to each puck. If you fold all the exosphere cables into one line, it will wrap around the Earth several times. This entire system is controlled in real time by specialized software. The signal goes from the central server to each of the 1,200,000 pucks simultaneously, without delay, synchronously. The final image resolution on the surface of the sphere exceeds the resolution of most modern TVs in the full sense of the word. At peak operation, the entire system consumes energy sufficient to power a small city. This is a separate engineering task: power supply system, balanced load, backup sources, overheating protection. And with all this, the pucks must work outdoors, in 40-degree heat, in dust storms, in rain. Every element is hermetic, protected, calculated for years of operation in desert conditions. There are buildings that change the appearance of a city. There are buildings that become symbols of an era. And very rarely, buildings appear that change the very definition of what architecture can be. The sphere belongs to the third category. Before it, we thought of a building's facade as something permanent. Marble, glass, concrete, materials that say the same thing every day, every year, every decade. The Sainsbury Wing in London looks the same as on opening day. The Empire State Building, the same. Facade as identity, unchanging, monumental. The sphere destroyed this idea completely. In the morning, it can be the moon, cold, gray with craters. At noon, a fireball, pulsating with orange light. In the evening, an advertisement for a movie, a concert, a brand. At night, a giant eye that slowly blinks and scans the strip. Every few minutes, the building changes personality. It has no constant appearance. Only the form is constant, a perfect sphere.
Everything else is variable. Architects have already named this programmable architecture. Building as a medium, facade as a screen, structure as a message that can be rewritten at any moment. This is not just a new construction technique, this is a new language. And Las Vegas, as always, turned out to be the place where this language was spoken for the first time, at full voice, without hesitation. $2,300,000,000. We return to this number, but now that you know what stands behind it, it sounds different. 600 piles in Vegas sand, the largest crane in Europe brought across the ocean, 32 trusses meeting at one point at a height of 100 meters, 1,200,000 light elements, each unique in its position, 2 independent buildings existing inside one form. Is it expensive? Undoubtedly. Is it justified? It depends on how you count. If you count by the price of a concert ticket, probably not. If you count by what this structure proved, what is possible, what is real, what can exist, then the price seems almost modest. Because every next building of this kind will be built with a glance at the sphere. Every engineer designing an LED facade will know that this task is already solved, and solved exactly like this. Every architect dreaming of a programmable building will have proof that the dream works. The sphere paid the price of the pioneer, and the price of the pioneer is always higher than the price of the second. In the late 19th century, when the Eiffel Tower was being built in Paris, critics called it ugly, meaningless, and a costly trinket. They said that in 20 years it would be demolished. 135 years have passed. The tower stands. The sphere is also criticized for energy consumption, for light pollution, for the fact that advertising on its surface is visible for kilometers, for being too bright, too big, too loud. Perhaps the critics are right in details, but in the main thing, they are wrong again. Because the sphere is not just a building in Las Vegas. This is the first sentence of a new conversation about what architecture can be, about the fact that a facade is not a sentence, that a building can speak, that form can be constant and meaning infinitely changing. 233 years ago, a man stood in a swamp and saw a palace there. Today, other people stand in a desert and see the future. They were both right. Subscribe to Time-Lapse Building. Next time, we will analyze a skyscraper with a pool connecting 3 towers at a height of 200 meters and explain why physically this is almost impossible. Almost.